So in the last lecture, we discussed about the firm, and we saw in a firm there are owners, there are managers, and there are workers. And we also try to understand that in a firm, owners and managers do have the power to control what workers are supposed to do in a firm. Now, the document that specifies what workers are expected to do is often called a labor contract. The major problem for a firm is that they have to employ workers, and often the contract they sign with workers are often incomplete contract. So in a firm, often firms employ other workers. Basically what they're trying to do, they're trying to use the effort of their employees. Mind you, like a broccoli, when you buy a broccoli, you own the broccoli. But when you buy labor, you don't own the person. All you own the time of the person, which again expected to be used in a very specific way. For example, if you hire a doctor, you can't force a doctor to be an actor. So as a result, it's very difficult to transform one form of labor into another form, because all labors are abide by some kind of formal or informal labor contract. So hiring employees is different from buying goods and services because it's incomplete in nature, because nobody knows what you are buying into. Some aspects of jobs are difficult to measure and monitor. For example, if you are a teacher, how do you monitor a teacher each and every moment what's going on in the class? Similarly, if you work in a, say, in a coffee shop, it's very difficult for your manager to observe what you are doing 24/7 or minute by minute. All they can do is randomly check on you, but that's not enough. So often the problem for a manager is to ensure that you are working the hardest possible, because if they are paying you, they are trying to get the most out of you during the time you work for them. Also, firms cannot force any employees to stay on the job. So as a result, most of the contracts that firms sign with labor is an incomplete contract, because it do not specify everything which a worker is supposed to do. And because they sign an incomplete contract, so many things are not enforceable in the court of law. Perhaps this is more nicely explained in this nice cartoon, where you can see these workers are telling each other. These are two workers. Clearly they're working, seems like, in a donut shop. They are saying that we are being paid minimum wages, so only a minimum amount of work. So that's the problem. So the issue for a firm is to pay you the bare minimum possible and to get out the best out of you. And as a worker, your aim is to provide the least possible given the income they are given. So it's a struggle, and you have to come up with some kind of a middle ground, and that's the issue of incomplete labor contract. So question is, how firms kind of entice people to work harder? So if firms can't directly measure effort, why do workers work hard? And there's a very interesting reason for this. It's called employment rents. So let's try to understand what is an employment rent. In terms of economics, employment rent is a cost of job loss, which includes lost income while searching for a job. For example, if you lose a job, you have to go and search for a job, which means that you have to spend money, you have to pay a recruiter, you may have to spend money on sending out applications. There's all sorts of costs involved looking for a new job. Costs required to start a new job also there are costs involved. For example, relocation costs. Suppose you get a new job, doesn't mean that your new job will be in the same place where you had been. So as a result, it requires some relocation expenses. And finally, there are cost of job loss involved with non-wage related stuff like medical insurance, health benefits. Some companies do provide different kind of privileges, which are the loss, and finally social cost, the stigma of being unemployed. Nobody wants to be unemployed because in a modern society still it's seen as a stigma that if you're not working, and nobody wants to go through that process. To calculate employment rents, first we need to understand the concept of reservation wage, that is the value of the next best option. So reservation wage is something which, suppose you are not working in a job, what's the next best option you have? And this particular case or diagram kind of explains it. This is a person named Maria, and this part is Maria's reservation wage. That means if Maria decides not to work, perhaps Maria will receive an unemployment benefit. That's her reservation wage. That means for Maria, if she's not working, her next best alternative is to receive unemployment benefit. So this is the reservation wage. So employment rent is nothing but the wage minus reservation wage minus disutility of effort. So in this case, this part is the employment rent. And what is this? This disutility of effort when employed. Hey, work is hard, right? And when you are working, it often doesn't mean that you are always happy to work on a job. That means sometimes gives you dissatisfaction. And in economics, we also try to capture that. So employment rent is the gap between the wage you are receiving minus disutility of your effort minus your next best option. If your wage is more than your disutility of effort and reservation wage, that means your employment rent is positive, which means that you have incentive to work harder, because you know if you lose your job, your next best option is to receive this reservation wage. So in other words, you always want to make sure your employment rent is greater than 0. That means, which another way to say that your wage has to be greater than your reservation wage and disutility of working. If your employment rate is more than 0, that means you will try to work hard. A good example of this in real life, for example, CEOs, right? How do you measure work of a CEO? And why do you think CEOs are paid these huge bonuses? One reason they are paid these huge bonuses because they have incentives built in. If they work really hard and they can make so much profit, they get to have huge bonuses. Same as profit sharing. Generally, if profit of a company is shared with the workers, workers have incentive to work hard because they know if company makes more profit, they will be part of that profit. So they will be getting a share in that profit. So that's how the employment rent works in real life, and that's how the employers try to take care of the incomplete contract issues by providing right kind of incentives.